Welcome to the Discourse Analyzer AI Toolkit, where articles come alive. You're listening to the audio version of our article. For the full text and an interactive experience, check out the link in the description below. Interact with any selection using our AI assistant to enhance your understanding. Let's explore.
Meaning beyond words in discourse analysis. In discourse analysis, meaning beyond words refers to the idea that communication involves much more than just the literal meaning of the words used. It encompasses the implicit, inferred, or socially constructed meanings that arise from the context, cultural norms, power dynamics, and nonverbal cues within discourse. Understanding meaning beyond words is crucial for analyzing how people convey and interpret messages in real-life communication, where the full meaning of an utterance often depends on more than just the words themselves. 1. Key concepts in understanding meaning beyond words. Pragmatics. Pragmatics is the branch of linguistics that studies how context influences the interpretation of meaning. It goes beyond the literal meaning of words, semantics, to consider how speakers use language in context. Key aspects include speech acts, actions performed through language, such as promising, requesting, or apologizing. The meaning of a speech act often depends on the context in which it occurs, not just the words themselves. Implicature. The meaning implied by a speaker but not explicitly stated. For example, if someone says, "It's cold in here," they might be implying that they want the window closed without directly asking. Deixis. Words and phrases that rely on context to convey meaning, such as here, there, this, and that. These terms need contextual information to be understood fully. Contextual meaning. Context plays a crucial role in shaping the meaning of discourse. This includes situational context, the physical or social situation in which the discourse occurs. For example, the phrase, "Can you pass the salt?" is understood differently at a dinner table than in a hardware store. Cultural context. The shared knowledge, beliefs, and practices of a community that influence how discourse is interpreted. Cultural norms can determine what is considered polite, appropriate, or offensive in different settings. Historical context. The time period and historical events that shape the meaning of discourse. For example, references to past wars or political movements carry specific connotations that can influence interpretation. Nonverbal communication. Nonverbal cues, such as body language, facial expressions, tone of voice, and gestures, contribute significantly to meaning beyond words. This includes paralanguage, the vocal elements that accompany speech, such as intonation, pitch, loudness, and tempo. These can convey emotions, attitudes, and emphasis that alter the meaning of the words spoken. Kinesics. Body movements, including gestures, posture, and facial expressions, that communicate meaning. A nod, smile, or frown can reinforce or contradict the spoken message. Proxemics. The use of space and physical distance between speakers, which can indicate levels of intimacy, formality, or power dynamics in the interaction. Intertextuality. Intertextuality refers to the way texts and discourses are connected to each other through references, allusions, or the incorporation of other texts. Meaning is often constructed by drawing on these connections. This includes quotations and allusions, references to other texts or cultural artifacts that carry meaning beyond the immediate context. For example, quoting a famous line from a movie can evoke certain emotions or shared cultural knowledge. Genres and conventions. The expectations associated with specific genres, e.g., a news report, a novel, or a legal document, that shape how the discourse is interpreted. Social and power dynamics. The social roles and power relations between participants in a discourse influence meaning beyond words. This includes power relations, how the relative power of speakers affects what is said and how it is interpreted. A command from a superior carries different weight than a suggestion from a peer. Politeness and face, how speakers manage face, i.e., their social self-image, through politeness strategies. Indirect language, hedging, and other tactics can be used to maintain politeness and avoid threatening another's face. Identity construction. How speakers construct and negotiate their identities through discourse. Language choices can signal group membership, status, and social roles, conveying meaning beyond the literal content. Point 2. Applications of understanding meaning beyond words. Media and political discourse. Understanding meaning beyond words is essential in analyzing media and political discourse, where much of the meaning is conveyed implicitly or through framing. This includes dog whistles, coded language that conveys specific meanings to particular groups while appearing innocuous to others. Framing. How issues are presented in a way that influences interpretation and response. For example, describing protesters as freedom fighters versus rioters shapes public perception. Interpersonal communication. In everyday conversations, much of the communication relies on shared context and nonverbal cues. Analyzing meaning beyond words helps to understand conflict resolution. How implicit meanings and nonverbal cues can escalate or de-escalate conflict in interpersonal communication. Humor and sarcasm. How humor often depends on shared knowledge and the ability to detect irony, which goes beyond the literal meaning of words. Cross-cultural communication. Understanding meaning beyond words is critical in cross-cultural communication, where different cultural contexts can lead to misunderstandings. This includes cultural miscommunication. How differences in politeness strategies, nonverbal cues, and contextual norms can lead to misinterpretation between speakers from different cultural backgrounds. Language and identity. How language use reflects cultural identity and how different cultural groups interpret meaning based on their cultural frameworks. Conclusion. Meaning beyond words. In discourse analysis emphasizes the importance of understanding the implicit, contextual, and nonverbal aspects of communication that contribute to the full interpretation of discourse. By examining pragmatics, context, nonverbal communication, intertextuality, and social dynamics, discourse analysts can uncover the deeper layers of meaning that are not immediately apparent in the literal content of language. This approach is essential for understanding how people convey and interpret complex messages in various social, cultural, and political contexts. Frequently asked questions. What does meaning beyond words refer to in discourse analysis? Meaning beyond words in discourse analysis refers to the implicit, inferred, or socially constructed meanings that go beyond the literal content of language. It encompasses the influence of context, cultural norms, power dynamics, nonverbal communication, and other factors that shape how messages are conveyed and interpreted. How does pragmatics help in understanding meaning beyond words? Pragmatics focuses on how context influences the interpretation of language, moving beyond literal meanings to consider what speakers intend and how listeners infer meaning. It includes concepts like speech acts, understanding actions performed through language, e.g., promising, requesting. Implicature. Identifying implied meanings that are not explicitly stated. Deixis. Interpreting context-dependent expressions like this or here. Why is context important in discourse analysis? Context is crucial because it shapes the meaning of discourse by providing the background against which language is interpreted. Types of context include situational context, the physical or social setting of the interaction. Cultural context, the shared knowledge, beliefs, and norms that influence interpretation. Historical context, the time period and historical events that shape the discourse's meaning. How do nonverbal cues contribute to meaning beyond words? Nonverbal cues, such as body language, facial expressions, and tone of voice, play a significant role in conveying meaning beyond the literal words spoken. This includes paralanguage, elements like intonation and pitch that convey emotions and attitudes. Kinesics, gestures and facial expressions that reinforce or contradict verbal messages. Proxemics, the use of space and distance to communicate intimacy, formality, or power. What is intertextuality, and how does it relate to meaning beyond words? Intertextuality refers to the way texts and discourses are connected through references, allusions, or the incorporation of other texts. It contributes to meaning beyond words by quotations and allusions, drawing on shared cultural references that add depth to the discourse. Genres and conventions, shaping interpretation based on the expectations associated with different genres. How do power dynamics influence meaning in discourse? Power dynamics shape how language is used and interpreted, affecting meaning beyond words through power relations. The influence of social hierarchies on discourse, where language from a superior may carry more weight than from a peer. Politeness and face, managing social self-image through language to avoid conflict or maintain politeness. Identity construction, using language to signal social roles, group membership, and status. How is meaning beyond words relevant in media and political discourse? In media and political discourse, much of the meaning is conveyed implicitly or through framing, such as dog whistles, coded language targeting specific groups while appearing neutral to others. Framing, presenting issues in a way that influences how they are perceived and responded to by the public. What role does meaning beyond words play in interpersonal communication? In everyday interactions, much of the communication relies on context and nonverbal cues, including conflict resolution, understanding implicit meanings and nonverbal cues to manage conflicts. Humor and sarcasm, relying on shared knowledge and the ability to detect irony, which often goes beyond the literal meaning of words. Why is understanding meaning beyond words important in cross-cultural communication? Cross-cultural communication often involves different contextual norms and nonverbal cues, which can lead to misinterpretations. Understanding meaning beyond words helps to avoid cultural miscommunication, recognizing differences in politeness strategies and contextual norms. Reflect cultural identity, interpreting how language use reflects cultural identity and is shaped by cultural frameworks. How does meaning beyond words enhance discourse analysis? Focusing on meaning beyond words allows discourse analysts to uncover deeper layers of meaning that are not immediately apparent in the literal content of language. By examining pragmatics, context, nonverbal communication, intertextuality, and power dynamics, analysts gain a more comprehensive understanding of how messages are conveyed and interpreted in various social, cultural, and political contexts.